Hello, everybody. I hope this finds you well today. This is Nicole, and welcome to The Cure for Chronic Pain. With me, I'm here, I'm ready to talk to you, and I'm really psyched. Today's interview is beyond. I know I say this a lot. I feel like I always say, like, today's the best day. But I have to be honest with you, today's the best day. Best one I've done. I mean, and it's not to take away from any of the others. This is just like a really important person in my life and in the life of my work. So today I'm interviewing who many of you have come to know as Olivia. I write about her in my book. I write about her in my blog. I have a really powerful blog I published about her success. And she has agreed to come on the podcast today, and her real name is actually Natalie. I went with a pseudonym when I first wrote about her because I wasn't sure if she wanted to be out there with her real name. But when I spoke to her this morning and we decided to do the interview, she was just loud and proud saying, "I don't care. I'll use my name. I'll talk about myself because I'm so grateful and so excited to share this message with others." And that's like a beautiful thing. So I'm going to get to that in a minute. As you guys know, this podcast is it's something that I'm doing. It's a real labor of love that I really would love to get out there as far and wide as possible. So if you are listening to this on iTunes, please rate and review it. I would so appreciate it. Even if you pause it right here and just hit the rate and review so that iTunes gets a sense that people are listening to it, because then it gets up in the ratings and it gets more suggestions. So I would very much appreciate that if you take the time to do it, because when you hear Natalie's story today, I think you're just going to be moved. You're going to be moved to know that if people aren't getting this, and if this is something that is available to them in their lives, it is tragic. It's tragic if they don't know about it, if they don't know about this work and their ability to heal themselves. Her story is incredibly powerful. So anyway, I'll tell you just a tiny bit about where to find me. I have a website. It's called thecureforchronicpain.com. I have a YouTube channel and a podcast, which you're listening to by the same name. You can Google my name and also probably find most of that stuff. And I have a book called The Meaning of Truth that's available on Amazon. And if you are looking for me to really hold your hand and bring you through this process, I have a online course called Freedom from Chronic Pain, and you can sign up for that on my website. And I believe it will transform your life in a pretty profound way. So lots of testimonials out there about the course, about my work that you can look up on all those places. And I hope you do so, because the only reason I'm here today and the only reason Natalie is here today is for you to do this for yourself, for you to open yourself for the possibilities in your own life. So I'm not going to give too much of an intro because it's really not necessary. She does a fantastic job of explaining her story herself, but it's a privilege and it's a pleasure to talk to Natalie today. I haven't talked to her in quite a while. She's so super healthy and busy and happy in her life that we haven't talked professionally for years, and we don't get to catch up very often. So it was a privilege for me as well to be able to sit down with her and hear her tell her story to all of you from her heart, from really her heart, which is it's something you don't get often in life. You don't often in life get to hear somebody speak from their actual heart, with their heart going out to you, even if she doesn't know you, even though she doesn't know you. She's looking to help you because of what has been given to her and what she did to change her life pretty much completely. So I'm gonna play the interview because I think there's really nothing I can say that is going to be more than what it can say for itself. So with that, I'm going to give you Natalie, and I send you love and light on this day, and confidence that you can do this for yourself. So listen to her words and open yourself to the possibilities that are your life. Hi there. So today on the podcast, we have Natalie. Now, people are going to remember her as Olivia, the story of Olivia in my book, and in my writing, in my blog. But the reason that you remember her by Olivia is at the time I did not want to use her real name. But at the time now she doesn't mind. And so I'm welcoming Natalie to the podcast, and she is going to share her story with you today. So, Natalie, wherever you want to start, people are always open to hearing a story of recovery and really needing it. So,
Hi,
go ahead.
everybody. Hi there. My name is Natalie. My story kind of starts back when I was, oh man, 22, 23. Is really when I started having signs of facial and head pain. I always kind of struggled with headaches and migraines on and off and stomach aches and, you know, debilitating things like that for me throughout college and even high school. I can remember having painful episodes where I really couldn't do much. They were so bad. And then I'd be stressed about school and not making, good grades, et cetera. And it would just worsen things for me. But I didn't really ever associate it with anything more than just stress or not eating right or something like that. So then the summer before I was starting veterinary school, um, I remember moving and I was supposed to, it was kind of a big summer for me. My boyfriend at the time was going to be moving to Wisconsin with me to move into an apartment. It was going to be our first time living together. And I was starting a really big um, new phase in my life with veterinary school. And I just remember starting to have this head pain and this facial pain that was like really deep. And, at first I thought it was like a sinus infection, but it wasn't going away. I tried antibiotics, nothing helped. And it started to progress. We moved, continued. It was going on for like 2 weeks, something like that. And it just got worse. And then I started vet school. And I remember the like second day or something like that, I was in our first lab and I started crying because I was in so much pain. I couldn't focus, I couldn't do anything, and I was excused. And I went to the dean's office and pretty much sat there and said, I can't be here anymore. I'm in so much pain. Um, and so I left and went to the ER. And long story short, they tried everything. They thought it was a migraine. Nothing worked. So I was admitted to a hospital back home in Illinois where my family lives. And I spent, I think, 2 weeks in that first hospital. During this time, I had to defer veterinary school. I had to call the dean and basically tell them that I'm hospitalized. And
Which I know
I,
was so hard for
it
you. Such a deep
was,
pain and disappointment.
it was my dream to become a veterinarian. And not to scare anybody, I am a veterinarian now. But so it did happen. But at the time, I truly felt like my life was over. I remember laying in the hospital bed in excruciating pain and just thinking that my life was completely over. And that I was never gonna be the same again. And nobody knew what was wrong with me. They did every test under the sun. I've had, probably 6 or 7 MRIs, CAT scans, spinal taps, infectious disease testing. I've been on so many medications, injectable and oral. I remember seeing like infectious disease specialists, neurologists, internal medicine doctors, everybody, and nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. My parents were completely distraught. I was discharged from that first hospitalization and basically sent home with no answers and medicated up the wazoo. I was even giving myself injections into my thigh just to knock myself out because get into so much pain that I couldn't tolerate it. I was like getting nauseous and throwing up over the amount of pain I was in,
Yeah.
that I would self-inject myself just to knock myself out so that I would rather be asleep than feel the pain that I was in, which is so sad. And then from there, my parents, I'm lucky that my family is um medical background. My parents are divorced, and my dad and my stepdad are both doctors, and both my moms are nurses, and so they know a lot of people, and so basically everybody was calling everyone, and I ended up seeing several more doctors after that. I traveled the country, going around the country seeing specialists to try to get an answer. Meanwhile, in excruciating pain. I remember specifically one memory that sticks out, my mom pushing me in a wheelchair in the airport because I couldn't walk because I was in so much pain. And like I remember that being such a difficult, sorry.
No, no. I mean, I think most people are shedding a tear with you because it's so hard. It's so
Uh,
hard.
I think I was 23, and my mother was pushing me in a wheelchair in the airport. And it's like you don't imagine ever being in that position where, you're an adult and your mom is still physically taking care of you. I always say this, people, I couldn't even get up in the morning and pour myself a bowl of cereal because I was in that much pain. I never got dressed. I barely ever showered. It just was too much for me. And I'm sure all of you guys can understand that level of incapacitation. Um, and so, anyways, I basically spent an entire year. I won't bore you with all the medical stuff, but I spent an entire year self medicating, researching other possible things, trying everything possible to get myself, in a better place than I was in. And I just was laying on a couch doing nothing, contributing nothing. And my boyfriend at the time had moved to Wisconsin, moved into our new apartment, and I was shipped back to Illinois to live with my parents because I couldn't do anything. And he was stuck in Wisconsin. He didn't even, wasn't even excited about moving there in the first place. So I had all this extra guilt now about that going on, and guilt about my parents needing to take care of me and medical bills, and basically dropping out of vet school and not fulfilling anything in life, except being a burden for people. I ended up one of the one of the biggest medical things that we tried was I ended up even going as far as traveling to Africa to see a doctor out there with my dad.
This was the last big intervention, right, medically?
Yeah, when we came back, I ended up doing maybe some like more chiropractor and acupuncture, and I tried a lot of the holistic type stuff too, and
Right.
none of that worked. But I ended up going to Africa, and I lived in Africa for a month and stayed with a doctor out there. And oh, the stories I could tell you about that.
Why don't you actually share a little bit about that? Because I think one of the most striking things about your recovery, Natalie, is the fact that you are recovered after what you went through and you're completely recovered. So just
Yeah.
not too much, but tell us a little bit about Africa.
Yeah, so my dad in all of his research found this specialist, or he actually what started out his career as a dentist or an oral facial surgeon, but he had become a migraine headache specialist out in Africa, and he believed in this different method for helping people that isn't really done here in the US. But anyways, long story short, when I got out there, they tried a lot of things with me. Um, a lot of the standard things that they do in the US first, and I already knew none of it was going to work since it had already been tried on me. And then he ended up the biggest thing that was well, the first biggest thing that was kind of scary was that we started doing these injections into my head and into my mouth. Um, Basically, if you could picture like 2 3 inch long needles were going all the way into the back of my mouth up into the muscle. And I would do that 4 5 6 times a day
Oh,
to get
God.
like numbingness to my face and my head, just so that I could feel relief in some fashion. um at that point I had been poked and prodded it so many times that like it didn't even scare me anymore because I was just like a pincushion. um so I just wanted anything that would give me some sort of relief. I didn't care. And then he operated on my face and my head, I ended up having a surgery, 2 surgeries where they went in and they cauterized some nerves and some vessels in my face and my skull. Um, Surprisingly, but not surprisingly, I woke up and was still in pain.
Right.
So basically, I spent a month out there and still had no answers, which is unbelievable. Um, when I came back, I would say that was like sometime in like March or April of that year when I came back. And so I was basically at that point I'd given up. Um and then um some time went by and my stepdad at the time um reminded me of something that he had brought up very early on when I was first hospitalized. I was hospitalized about I think 3 times and 4 times in total during that year by different doctors. But my first hospitalization back when I had deferred vet school, my stepdad had brought up this concept of mind body syndrome to me. Um, and of course, my mom and I were completely like, I can't believe you think I'm making this up. Like, this is, I'm in so much pain. This is real. And I was not in a place to receive that kind of suggestion.
And Natalie, I think it is worth taking a moment here to then tackle the misperception, the common misperception
Yeah,
that when we talk about mind body medicine, it sounds to the patient like we're saying they're making it up or we're
right.
saying it's in their head. And I'm sure at the time you and Tony didn't have enough of a dialogue. You were in too much pain and you were too desperate to have a
Yeah,
dialogue about what it really was. But I want to bring some empathy and some connection to the fact that that is sometimes the way this sounds to people, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Mind
hmm,
body illness does not mean, even in the slightest bit, that you're making it up. What it means is that the genesis of the problem, that is very physical and very real, is in the emotional realm. That's all it
correct.
means. But the common misperception of that and the mistake leads a lot of people to not seek the mind body
Yeah.
path. And so I just wanted to take a moment to bring connection to that. But go on.
And I think that, I mean, what you said is so true. And I think that it's important that people go through the medical stuff first to, rule out anything that's serious. Although my story is really scary with the number of things that I did go through, but I think that in order to get to a place where I could fully process the concept of mind body syndrome, I needed to go through that stuff. And um um at, I will mention though that at the beginning when my dad did bring that up, he suggested that I start seeing a hypnotherapist. And I remember that like a hypnotherapist, I guess that's what you call them.
Yeah.
Uh, he coming to the hospital and actually doing hypnosis on me in the hospital. Um, and that was one of the only times before I met Nicole of me having relief, because I remember being physically outside of my body and not being in pain and like seeing it's crazy to think about it, but I think that there's connection there with mind body syndrome. And not not having pain during that. But
Well, sure.
anyways,
Well, sure, because if you think about it, the truth of the matter is, I mean, I don't do hypnotherapy, nor do I have enough education or knowledge about it to recommend it. But I will say, in theory, it makes sense because when you're obsessed about the pain in your head, it becomes
mhm,
doing things to your head or doing
mhm,
things to your body, so you don't feel a thing in your head. But when you're hypnotized, it's about an experience. It's
right.
about an emotional and mental experience that you're going to go through. So in that sense, it does make a lot of sense to me
Yeah.
that that's the one thing that gave you a bit of relief.
Yeah, other than, completely knocking myself out, but that's not a way to live. Um, yeah, so, back to what I was saying, so my stepdad brought it up again after Africa, and after I had spent some self-loathing time, when I got back, um, I think that my parents were everyone was feeling very sad and sorry for me. And I was, just to bring like light, to bring some like understanding to all of this and like true connection to all this and where the place I was at. I was in such a bad place. I was suicidal. Like I thought about ending my life often because I felt like I was not only wasting my life and wasting everybody else's time, but I thought that I was giving nothing else back, and I was in so much pain that it wasn't worth living. So, um, my dad brought it up, and I was like, "Well, what the hell? Like at this point, why not? I've tried everything else." And I ended up finding a course in Chicago with a man named Dr. Strax. Well, I didn't find it, my mom found it. Um, and he is I think he's an internist.
Yeah, we've talked about Dr. Strax before on the podcast because
Okay.
my other interviews is one of his patients, and he now has an exclusive mind body practice in
Yeah.
Chicago. Yeah,
Yeah, but like before the
yeah,
mind body practice, I think he was an internist because he does that as well on the side, I think. Like
yeah. He was an
yeah,
internist at Northwestern at the time.
correct. That's right. Um, so my mom ended up driving me to Chicago. I think it was once or twice a week for a month for his course, where basically I sat with a group of other people who were suffering from chronic pain, and we worked through a book that he created and did different exercises, and then we had to do them together, and then we had to do them at home, and etc. And I remember getting so frustrated with myself because I wasn't getting relief, and every week I'd come in and people were feeling better and I was exactly the same. And I remember at the end him talking to me and saying, "Look, I think you would benefit from some more direct one-on-one help, and I'm gonna bring your name up to a friend of mine." And that's when he brought up Nicole, and reached out to Nicole, and we started doing sessions together.
And I remember that because I remember, this is a long time ago. So, Natalie, about how many years ago is this?
God,
6?
I think 6,
Yeah. So,
5 or 6.
yeah, it was about 6 years ago. And Dr. Strax and I are close colleagues and have worked with the same patients many a time. But when he reached out to me about Natalie, there was a solemn energy. It was, this is a big one, Nicole. I don't know. I mean, even Dr. Strax was like, this is just a really serious case. Like, do you want to take this? And I remember
Yeah.
hearing your story, which everybody is having the privilege of hearing right now, and just being floored about what you had been through and saying, absolutely, 100%, let's do it. And that's when we met.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the first session that we had together, I was still in a, disbelief, like, what is this state? Because I felt like I had a week or a month of work with Dr. Strax, and again, something else didn't work for me. So it wasn't until I had a conversation with Nicole and then read her book did I actually start believing and start digging deep into issues in my life, in my past, in my childhood that I'd never ever really given much attention to or allowed myself, I think that's a better way to say it, allowed myself to give attention to, rather than just shoving it away like I did with most things in my life and continue on as, the perfect person that everyone expected me to be.
Right.
Um, and that's when things started to change for me. When I started to do that work, when I started to journal every day, as much as it was painful, I remember journaling and like fighting through the pain because my pain would just rip roar every time I would pick up the pen and word vomit things that I'd never allowed myself to say. Um, but that's what did it for me. And there were times where I would wake up and I wouldn't be in pain. And then it would come back in, late morning. And then it would start to get longer where I would have days where I'd wake up and I wouldn't be in pain and I wouldn't think about my pain the second I opened my eyes, which was a pattern for me. Obviously, it'd become the norm where I'd wake up and I would expect that I would just be in excruciating pain. Um, and then, it wouldn't be there. And I would almost like feel like this isn't real. And I would talk to Nicole and she'd be like, just let it be what it is. Let it be. And then it would come back. And then I'd have days where I wouldn't have pain at all. And then I'd be back the next day. And slowly but surely it started to go longer. Or I remember where I would still be in pain, but it was a level 2 or a level 3 rather than a level 8 or 9. And that was even a win for me. And it it was just going, I think that the thing that's hard for a lot of people going through this process is that everybody kind of goes through it a little bit differently. And I wanted so badly in the beginning to be one of those people that read one of the Mind Body books, read one of Dr. Strack's books, read Nicole's book, read Sarno's book, and it was gone. Everything was gone. But I think that I just had so much that I had to dig up that it took me a lot longer. And it wasn't until, I don't even know. I don't have like an exact timeline because I think I stopped putting a timeline on it because I just started living. Yeah. I just started living and I stopped putting expectation on it, which if I could give you guys any advice at all, that was I think the biggest thing for me that turned things around was I stopped placing expectation on my healing and on my process of this journey. I was in the beginning putting so many I was doing exactly what I did with every other thing in my life. And I still have patterns of this, now that I work on, but making sure that I was doing it perfectly and expecting that I was going to have results, tomorrow or within, an hour or whatever. I just stopped doing that. I just decided that this work was for me and it wasn't about what the outcome was anymore. Um, because it obviously wasn't I wasn't gaining anything. I was just getting more frustrated when I wasn't reaching that expectation, which is then adding to my pain.
Right.
um yeah, so I don't know where I really left off with my story, but
Well,
um
let's take a minute though, because I really love that you brought up the concept of not comparing your journey to other people's or not expecting to be well overnight. Because
yeah.
I do a lot of consultation right now in my practice, so I'm always meeting new people. And one of the conversations I've been having a lot with people, and I'm wondering, Natalie, what your take is on it, is the concept of our nervous system is always asking us the same question, which is, are we okay? Are we okay? Are we okay?
Mhm.
And we're always answering it. And sometimes the answer is yes, we're fine and we can relax and we can be in rest and repair. And sometimes the answer is no, we're not okay. Like we need our adrenaline up. We need to get like our best thinking on and move faster and think quicker and be stronger to get ourselves out of a situation. And that's the state of being a functioning human being. But what I feel happens when a lot of people are recovering from TMS or any sort of mind body illness is that they're so desperate to get well that their very desperation and desire to get well becomes a sign to the nervous system that they're not okay. And so, like, when you're checking on the pain and you're trying to touch into it and being like, how bad is it right now? Or
Yeah.
you're really desperate to get well and you're like, how many days has it been that I've been journaling? That other person seemed like they were better quicker. We're
Yeah.
answering that question. We're answering that question. So the nervous system is saying, are we okay? And we're saying, no, actually, we're not, with our feelings and our tension and our anxiety. And what ends up happening is the very nature of mind body illness is that the pain is seen as a lesser predator than the feelings. So if the feelings are getting kicked up and the nervous system is hearing we're not okay, what is it naturally going to do? It's going to up the pain because the
Right.
pain is the thing that's diverting us from the feeling we don't want to feel. And
Exactly.
so, one of the things that is so hard for people to understand that I so badly want them to understand is the key to doing this work is, first of all, believe, because you have to believe in order for it to work for you. Second of all, do the work every day, which we'll talk about in a minute because I would love some of your tips on your journal speaking. The third is patience and kindness for yourself because you cannot loathe yourself while you're doing this. It'll just keep you more
Mhm.
still. You got to, if you want to move forward, you have to be kind. But on top of all of that, you need to kind of not care if you get better. I know that sounds so crazy,
Yeah.
but
That was the hardest one for me.
right?
I think the patience and kindness is hard for a lot of us TMS people because of our personalities.
Mhm.
I mean, that is to this day hard for me, like being patient and kind with myself, although I am so much better than I used to be. But the hardest one for me was the not caring how I did, because I think we're people who are prone to be perfectionists at everything, and that's why we end up where we do as far as our chronic pain goes. But because you can't it's impossible to be perfect. We all know that, even though we still strive for it on a regular basis. I think that I felt like I was criticizing myself all the time over where I was in this process. And because I wasn't doing, quote, a good enough job, I would just, almost punish myself for it.
Yeah.
And then I would have to start all over again. And so I got to a point where I really understood that, because I think it was because I started making connections of that with my patterns in everyday life, and that I'm doing exactly what I do to myself with everything else, with my work, with my relationships, with, even how I make the bed. Like, it sounds dumb, but that sounds dumb, but it's so true. And then I realized I'm doing exactly, and that's the whole point in this, is that the whole point is that we need to be kinder to ourselves and accept that I'm good enough for me, and that means I'm good enough for everybody else. And so this process is taking me through a different journey than someone else, and that's fine. That's my process, not theirs, and I need to just let go and let it be what it is. And maybe that means that I'm, not going to start feeling better until, tomorrow or next month or 5 months from now. I just stopped putting a time on it and started just focusing on the present, and that's when it started getting better for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
So,
one of the things I've been recently explaining to people is our fear is embedded in us for a good reason. Because at the dawn of mankind, if that early man wasn't afraid of that predator on its way over to eat us, there would be no mankind.
right.
We had to get started somewhere, and you're not going to get started if you're constantly being eaten or killed. And so there had to be this very important primitive natural fear built in that would protect us at all costs. But the problem with fear in 2019, in the constant barrage of modern society, is that our fear has now taken on a role that we can't talk it out of being in charge of us. The only way you can get rid of fear is by the next right considered action, and honestly, tricking it. I believe
Mhm.
in tricking fear. Like when fear says, I need to get well, I need to get well, I say, whatever, I'll be well when I'm well. I just don't care anymore.
Right.
I can't.
That's
I got,
totally, yeah.
right? I got nothing. I got nothing. I can't care. I can't think about you anymore. I can't
Yeah.
count one more day. And that's when
And
it starts getting better.
it's amazing. And even to this day, like, I'm not, we can talk more about where I'm at now if you want at some point, but even to this day, I still have da days, because I will always have mind body syndrome. Like, it's my disease, just like it's your disease, but
It's Natalie, it's everybody's disease, PS.
it's everybody's disease,
Mhm.
right? But I to this day still have days where I'm in pain. I am having a, quote, bad day, is whatever. But I no longer give it the credit or the focus or anything that I used to give it, like every moment of my life where I was so self-consumed and where it was at, checking in and making sure it wasn't as bad as it was a moment ago, and am I doing good enough at this, blah blah blah. I notice it, and then I say, okay, it's there, moving on.
And then
And
it
then
goes.
guess what? It's gone.
Yes.
And then it goes away. So it's discrediting the credit that we used to give it so much, that you understand it once you do the work. Once you do the work and you understand why it's there and why it's redirecting you away from your true, emotions that you're not focusing on. Once you understand those things and you resurface all of that, because you have to do that first. Then once you know have days again or moments again where you're feeling your pain come up again, you understand it already, and so you don't care anymore. you know why. It's an incredible, like almost empowering feeling to understand yourself so much better than you did during that whole process where you were going through all the pain. And you'll get there. You just have to do the work.
Absolutely, and I think that that's a really interesting way to put it, that, like, you didn't even know that you were who you were, like, you didn't even know.
No.
I mean, a lot of people say, "Thank God for the pain." Of course, they say it way after, so if you're
Mhm.
listening to this, don't, send me daggers through the computer. I'm sorry, but you will be grateful for it because
I'm
when
pretty
you
sure you told me that earlier on, and I was like, "Yeah, okay."
yeah, you're like, "Screw you, Nicole. There's no gratitude here." But the truth of the matter is it opens you to you, and then you're not ruled by fear anymore. And when you're not
Mhm.
ruled by fear, I always say to people, chronic pain is not about pain. Chronic pain is an epidemic of fear. And once you're not
Yeah,
scared of it anymore, it can't become chronic.
right. Yeah, and I remember because I started vet school up again the
Okay, so
summer
wait,
at
wait, so let's talk about that because it's, like, super triumphant, and it makes me gives
uh,
me all the warm fuzzies. So, we started our work together in April, and by
yeah.
September, Natalie was once again enrolled in veterinary school, and tell them.
Mhm. Yeah, so I remember it was maybe like June or July that I was having a session with Nicole, and I remember telling her, I'm afraid to start school, and she's like, "Why?" I'm like, "I'm scared that I'm gonna be in pain and I'm not gonna be able to study and I'm not gonna be able to focus and I'm not gonna be able to be, one of the other students like everybody else and do well." And she's like, "You're falling back into exactly where you were.
Yeah,
Refocus." Like that if you will never be where you were again because you know too much now. You will never be, and she was right. Yeah, I never let myself become so debilitated again where I gave up on myself. And not that it's wrong to have a day where you're in pain. Like that is not what I mean. There's no judgment on that at all because trust me, there were days where I was beyond stressed and putting way too much pressure on myself during vet school where yeah, I had head pain and facial pain again. But the difference for me was that I ignored it. As hard as it was, I ignored it and I decided I know why you're there. I could pinpoint exactly what was going on in that moment or in that week or whatever, that upcoming week
right.
that was creating this pain for me. And I let myself say, you are feeling this because, and I accepted it, and then the pain eventually subsided and I was able to continue on. But I went through vet school. I actually graduated top 5 in my class and went on to I'm gonna cry again.
Oh, honey, I love you.
I love you too. Went on to one of the top internship programs afterwards for rotating veterinary medicine, and now I'm living in Philadelphia. I matched for a emergency and critical care residency program out here at University of Pennsylvania. I'm living my best life right now, and could not be more grateful for the pain. I can say that for sure.
I have written about you. I have talked about you. You're a little bit of the crowning jewel in my cap. Well, just because, first of all, I've changed a lot over these 6 years, and I've grown a lot as a therapist. And
Yeah.
you and I, even though I'm much older than you and we were a little bit babies together in this. I had just published my book. I was really like, I was kind of lacking confidence. Like, how am I going to explain this to people? It felt so hard. It felt so complicated. And you were one of the first people that I was like, we're going to do this so full on. I'm not going to be scared. I'm going to tell her everything she needs to know. And I've always been so grateful for your willingness and your ability to say, all right, then let's just do this shit. Like, I'm not dying anymore. I'm ready to live.
Yeah.
And that's what you've done, and it's so beautiful. And I guess, I would love for you to share just for a moment if there, right now we are talking to thousands of people. The podcast is really growing. I'm really grateful for that. It's getting many thousands of listens, and people are
Amazing.
struggling. And if you could give them, any words of wisdom about their journey, what would they be?
Oh, first of all, I want all of you to know that I've been where you are, as you heard through my story. And I know the defeat that you're feeling right now, and the feel like just giving up on everything. But don't. There's still something out there for you, and this journey has been life-changing for me in so many levels than I expected. Even after, my pain had gone away, I continue to do the work on a regular basis because it's so good for you. So just have hope. I guess that's the biggest thing for me, is that if I didn't have that hope, I wouldn't have pursued it and I wouldn't have continued. Even on those days that are the worst days, just hold on to that little speck of hope and keep going, and try your best to not self-criticize during this, as hard as that is, because I'm, an expert at that. Um, because that will be, I think, a very key thing for you during this process, is the kinder you are to yourself during it, the more softness that you give yourself during this, the easier it becomes. Because if you think about it, while you're doing the work, if you're just soft and you talk to yourself in a way that is different than you normally do, like, doesn't that just sound nicer? Doesn't that just sound like more lovely? And to me, I think that I've learned, um that through, like, mind body syndrome, through the journaling, through talking to Nicole, I've learned a new language for myself too, which is something that you probably won't believe that you'll gain through this, but you will. Um, and so I don't know, I want to wish everybody, oh, a I don't want to wish you luck, because you don't need luck. You need the courage. I want to wish you all courage to do it, and to overcome that fear that, I'm going to be stuck in this place forever, because you're not. As long as you give yourself the chance, and you give Nicole in this process a chance, I promise you'll see light. And better days are coming. And I'm happy to talk to anybody, through email or through the website or
Oh, be
whatever, if anyone
careful.
wants to hear
Be
more about my
careful.
story.
Be careful what you offer there, Natalie. You're gonna be barraged. But the truth of
Good.
the matter is, even though she said that, I'm not necessarily giving out her contact information, but you're so lovely to say that. No,
I mean, it's hard not to feel like, connected to people who've been through the same thing that you have. So,
no,
um,
honestly, Natalie, I just wanna thank you from, like, the depths of my soul. I don't have a deep enough place to tell you how I thank you, because you are sharing your humanity. You're so present right now. You're so lovely, and I know that I've watched you change. That this Natalie that we're talking to today is a result of 6 years of hard introspection, and what she has gained, and
yeah.
she has gone, and the confidence and the presence that I hear in you. Natalie is not my patient anymore, so I don't talk to her often. And even just now, I need to say to you in front of everybody, like, you're amazing, and you're doing
No, thank you.
so well. And your presence here and your sharing is a gift to everybody who is listening, because it is truth. We speak truth right here, you and me, and that is what people need to hear in order to do this for themselves.
And you can do it. It seems daunting, but you can. It's it's a lot of work. The journaling is hard. I will give you that. It was very hard for me, because I feel like we didn't really talk about the journal speak side of things a little bit, but for me, the beginning, I was very superficial. And so one thing that I think maybe you've maybe gotten from Nicole's, um, advice about it, is that you really have to get into that ugly, dark place that you don't want to approach, to start surfacing what truly needs to be surfaced.
Right.
So, um, yeah, I don't know how much more you want me to say about that,
Well,
but just
the truth is that, and so that actually opens up a really good space for me to say, if this is the first time you're hearing about Journal Speak, because some people just trip over this podcast and start listening
I
to
see.
it, um, please avail yourself of all my information. I'm going to record an intro and tell people where to find me, but my website, The Cure for Chronic Pain, my YouTube channel of the same name, this podcast, and my book, The Meaning of Truth, on Amazon. Learn, teach yourself, because as
Mhm.
you teach yourself, your belief will rise, because you'll start, there's a lot of testimonials in my book and on this podcast, and like, just people appearing on my YouTube channel, and then my story. You start to say, oh my God, it's sinking in. Maybe this is true for me. Maybe this can work for me. And then as you learn, you'll understand how to do journal speak, as Natalie is discussing.
Yeah.
And that is how that's the roadmap out. What I want people to understand is, when I hand you my work, I hand you a roadmap out of the place that you're in that is precise, and I'm 100% confident in it. So if you can just believe the messenger and stop digging caves for yourself along the way in the forest, and, like hiding in your cave with Google and trying to figure out more about what's wrong with you with the almighty Google,
Dr. Google.
yeah, Dr. Google, your worst enemy. If you can stop doing that, and if you can say, you know what? Fuck it. I love fuck it, because fuck it's important. I'm not
Yes.
doing this anymore. I'm not staying in the cave anymore. I'm snapping the computer shut, and I'm getting the roadmap that Nicole has promised me will get me out of the woods if I just do it, and I'm going to do it. And when my resistance says, this isn't a good idea, this will never work for you, look at that
Yeah.
guy, he's better, you're not, say, thank you for sharing, I'm bored by you, I'm walking on. Right?
It's so true. Oh, man. Wow.
Yeah, well, this is the stuff. So listen, I am just like so enamored by you. You're the best. I love you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie.
Love you too.
Thank you for being my Olivia all these
You're
years
so
and sharing your
welcome.
story. And thank you for,
Thank you for having me.
well, thank you for everything. We're just like a love fest over here. Until next time, you have been listening to The Cure for Chronic Pain, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.